Hello everyone. Today, our Group 10 will present to you the topic Qualitative Research Method. And here is our table of contents. We will move to the very first content. In this, we will review the marketing research data. As you know, the primary data include qualitative data and quantitative data. And in this presentation, we will focus on the quality one. The qualitative method are those that are oriented toward the discovery of qualities of things, and the quantitative method are oriented towards the number of or amount of these qualities. And about the purpose of qualitative research method, this method aims to get a better understanding through first-hand experience, truthful reporting, and quotation from actual conversations.
Next, we will come to the classification of qualitative research. Firstly, we want to take a general look at qualitative research procedures. It may be direct or indirect method. And indirect, we have the focus group and the depth interview method. And indirect method, we call it projective technique, includes 4 techniques, and we will clarify it later. Firstly, I will give you some key points about the definition and the characteristic of focus group. The next, we will clarify some main process. It's focused on the determining objective. Prepare the questionnaire and outline and conduct the interview, then we review, analyze, and summarize this. Then next, when you do the focus group, it has 2 ways. It's the online and traditional, and we have some slight difference between this. Firstly, about the composition. When you do the online focus group, you can do it anywhere in the world, but in the traditional, you have to draw from the local area. And the next difference is about the cost. In online focus group, it's non-cost, and in traditional way, it can be expensive. And the last one is about the effectiveness between online and traditional focus group. And when you conduct the focus group, it can be upside and downside. When it comes to the positive side, we can get a variety of perspective reaction to a certain issue, and it allows for participants to build off of one another, and it has many perspectives on a short time. When it comes to the negative side, it is not replicable and detailed as in-depth, and the specific individuals may dominate the discussion, and it is difficult to transcribe if speaking overlaps, and it is not confidential. And next, we have some main application of focus group. Firstly, understanding consumer perception, preference, and behavior concerning a product category, and then obtaining impression of new product concept, generating new ideas about older products, and developing creative concept and copy material for advertisement. And the fifth one is securing price impression, and the last one, obtaining preliminary consumer reaction to specific marketing programs.
So we already know about the focus group. So next we come to the depth interviews. So depth interview, basically you conduct a one-on-one interview with one specific person to collect detailed information from that person. And the 3 most popular techniques we often use in depth interview are laddering, hidden issues, questioning, and symbolic analysis. To get you more understanding about these techniques, I give you an example of an airline brand so that you can understand how these techniques help to build up their communication strategies. So first, coming with the laddering techniques. So it contains a line of question processed from product characteristic to user characteristic. So for example, imagine that you need a wide body aircraft so that you can get more work done and you'll be accomplish more. And for that, you can feel good about yourself. So you go from the product characteristic, which is the wide body aircraft, to your own user characteristic, which that will make you feel good. So the advertising theme of this airline brand would be you will feel good about yourself when flying our airline. So that's their communication message. Next is a technique is the hidden issues questioning. This technique attempts to locate personal sore spots relating to deeply felt personal concerns. So for example, you interested in fantasy things and with the social lives like that. So you would tend to like the elite life or some competitive activities. So the advertising theme should focus on the aggressive communications with to the high status persons. And the last techniques is symbolic analysis, which means the symbolic meaning of the objects is analyzed by comparing them with their opposites. So just imagine that the interviewers will ask the interviewees such questions like what it would be like if you no longer use your airplanes. So the interviewees basically answered like, without airplane, I would have relied on long letters and long distance calls, so that the airlines would know that their communication strategy would focus mainly on how fast their service is and to make it like a Federal Express does for a package, so it can bring the convenience to the consumers. So that's all about the depth interview and their techniques. We're coming to the next part.
Okay, so for the next part, we'll take a look into another area of the qualitative research procedures, that is the indirect or disguised qualitative research technique, and that includes the projective technique. The definition for the projective technique is that they are an unstructured, indirect form of questioning that encourages respondents to project their underlying motivations, beliefs, attitudes, or feelings regarding the issues of concerns. So basically, what this means is that different from the direct technique, the projective technique will try to get information from consumer in a way that they they don't recognize, and it is very helpful for many situations that requires a deeper understanding of customers when they are shy or when they have emotional barriers. So the four technique includes the association technique, the completion technique, the construction technique, and finally the expressive technique. So first, for the association technique, an individual is presented with a stimulus and asked to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. So for example, in this they are presented with a list of stimulus or test word that includes words like wash day, fresh, pure, scrub, and the respondents are required to think about the first to think about the first thing that comes to their mind when they hear such words. And by doing so, the respondent can have the understanding about their affections or their feelings. So what a certain object or a certain problem. The second technique is the completion technique. The respondent is asked to complete an incomplete stimulus situations, and the common techniques include the sentence completion and the story completions. So for example, in the sentence completions, they are presented in an open-ended sentence, and then the respondents needs to fill in the missing information. First, for example, a person who shop as Sears is, and the respondents needs to fill in what they think about who they think will be a person that is typically shop as Sears. And the third technique is the construction technique that requires the respondent to construct a response in the form of a story, a dialogue, or descriptions. And the common techniques for this are the picture responses and the cartoons. For picture response, the respondents are required to provide a list of pictures, and then they need to express what they think is happening in the pictures. And this is very helpful for situations that are very sensitive for users for respondents to speak, or for situations that have a high morality, high morale. And the final technique is the expressive technique. The respondents are presented with a verbal or visual situations and are asked to relate the feelings and attitudes of other people to the situations. And the common techniques for this are role playing and the third person technique. So for role playing, the respondents will be taken part in a certain situations, and they are required to think about what that person in that situation would do, and they need to do the same. And this is very beneficial for the researchers to understand their feelings and their perspective, their at the subconscious level. And for the advantages and disadvantages of the projection technique, the main advantage is that it might elicit responses that the subject would be unwilling or unable to give if they know the purpose of the study. And for the disadvantages, the biggest disadvantage is that they are very expensive because they require highly trained interviews, and they need skilled interpreter to analyze the response, and they also suffer a serious risk of interpretation bias. Okay, so now we'll come to the next part of the presentation.
Okay, so for the next part, we talk about the analysis of qualitative research. An example is when HR department need to study why employees are frustrated by their work. When they gathering and examining the data to discover the root problem, this is the analysis. There's also specifically an example of grounded theory, which is to develop the concepts and the relationship between the concepts. The procedure of grounded theory includes 3 types of coding. The first one is open coding. In the first step, when asking question, what can be done is to ask more general question instead of very specific one. When making data comparison, different types include people, processes, or situations are compared to make the characteristics of them become clearer and show the differences and similarities. In this stage, similar code can be grouped into categories. In the next step, theoretical coding. Different types of relationship can be formed in this stage and can be up to 18 types. Although theoretical follow open coding, but in practice, the process can be carried out in parallel and iteratively. And in the last step, selective coding. The ultimate objective is not to develop any new concept, but to define one unified theory or category, represent the central thesis. The core category you develop in selective coding may come from elevating one of the categories from the theoretical coding stage, or maybe a new category that derived based on the other categories. They can also result in going back to gather new data or scan the data, or the data becomes saturated, which means additional collection and analysis of data no longer lead to new insights.
And yes, while the grounded theory approach starts with an open perspective and does not require much theoretical pre-understanding, but in contrast, the template approach utilizes existing concepts and theories, and it is a thematic way of qualitative analyzing a set of procedures to guide your analysis. And normally, this is an approach to use when you're looking for to characterize common threads, issues across the dataset, where you define a pattern or a theme in your qualitative data. Like when you can see that your participants or respondents keep coming back to some certain sort of issues or answers, and these common themes can be grouped together and be defined as one theme. And the template approach also involves the development of a coding template, which summarizes themes identified as important by the researchers. And yes, no matter what method you are using in your analysis, whether it is grounded theory or template approach, you should follow these general steps in your analysis. So first is to reduce your data set, because the raw data that you've collected is unstructured and it needs organizing and coding for easier analysis. And next, advice step is to visualize your data through a diagram, a chart, or a matrix, so that it will help to illuminate patterns and interrelationships in the data. And lastly is to draw your conclusion by considering the meaning of analyzed data and assessing its implications for the research question. To summarize our key point of this chapter, we want to take a general look market. In the qualitative method, it may be direct or indirect, and the major direct methods are focus groups and depth interviews, and the indirect techniques are called the projective techniques because they aim to project the respondent motivations, beliefs, attitude, and feelings onto ambiguous situation, and it may be classified as association, completion, construction, and expressive. And this is all of our presentation. Thank you for your listening.